to a new episode of the Soccer and Fitness podcast and Coaching Board collaboration video and podcast format. So, Soccer and Fitness created by myself, the host and creator, Sean Spencer. So today it is Friday evening, and those that saw episode 49 will know basically what I've been trying to do in regards of doing the podcast with the YouTube videos. And sort of episode 49 was a little bit of a trial format with that one. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I wanted to sort of do my best with it and see what happens. For those that haven't seen or heard episode 49, basically I had a YouTube channel called The Coaching Board, which was like a soccer themed YouTube channel, and 2 years later, or a year and a half later, I started a podcast on Anchor and Spotify and Apple. So the aim is now to have like a video format along with the sort of audio format. So there's going to be a couple of different versions, depending on what you prefer. If you prefer driving and listening to the podcast, then no need to sort of change anything. But if you prefer video format, then it's going to be available on YouTube on Coaching Board. So that was Wednesday. We did episode 49, and we just talked through Rinus Michael's book and Zonal Marking, Michael Cox's book. Today's episode, however, is going to be a little bit more on like interview sort of issues, so real world problems. So if you are a coach or like an analyst or whatever position you're trying to go for, normally you're going to have to go through the interview process. Now, I spoke a couple of episodes back about like CV and experience and how to make it as like a professional soccer coach. Now, what I'm going to be discussing is my own personal experiences. Now, I understand that everybody's experience is very, very different. So, I mean, it is what it is, and take it for what it is. This is me personally on my sort of experiences now. And I said it a couple of episodes back as well, that you might get lucky. I have a friend who I went to university with, was doing match analysis and has basically been involved with a couple of Europeans' top soccer clubs, and he's never been out of work in all that time. And we're talking like 10, 15 years. He's just gone from one job to another. I've also known talented coaches that have went high up and then they basically quit, changed career and went into something else. So I'm going to be talking mainly from my experience and recent experience. Now, what I'll do is I'm not going to sort of mention any team names or names of the interview, because I don't think that adds any value into it. It's more to create a discussion around sort of the process. And hopefully what I'm hoping for is, like, when I've listened to podcasts in the past, what I've always liked about them is something that I can relate to, and knowing that you're not the only one out there that's going through this process or experienced something, and that somebody else with maybe more qualifications or less qualifications, more experience, etc., has also gone through that. So excuse me. So that's what I'm hoping for from this episode, basically. But before we get into the sort of the meat of the episode, as is always tradition, and today's like a bit of a landmark because this is episode 50, and I had no idea that I would be doing episode 50 for a podcast, never mind trying to sort of mix it with YouTube as well. So traditionally we have a drink. Now, first drink, I'm kind of halfway through, is this one, which is, you might have guessed, Guinness. So I'm also almost there. So cheers. And then I've also got down here Carback. Again, if you're a regular listener, this isn't a new one. Carback Love Street Blonde. So Carback is local to Houston, where I'm currently living at the moment. Yeah, and it's just a nice, easy sort of blonde beer, ale, whatever you want to call it. Other than that, we are going to jump straight into this. Yeah, and like I said, before we start, you may agree, you may disagree, whatever it is, it's just mainly to get you thinking. So here we go. So recently, a job interview that I sort of went for was to do with soccer, and it was a head coach position. And it got pretty far down the line to where the owner of the club was then contacting my references. Now, one of the questions that went to a couple of the references, so I had 3 references on there, and each one of them was called, and then the question also went to me as well. And the question was, would you go to battle with me? And again, so the question was to me, would I go to battle with myself, and also would I go into battle with, would my reference go into battle with me? Which, out of all the questions that I've had, I find tremendously bizarre. And I've tried to look at this like pretty objectively. So let's look at it as like real world. So would I go to battle with me? Now, if I was going to go, I mean, first things first, like what type of battle are we talking about? So this is purely like literal sense now. Would I go into battle with me? I mean, it depends. It depends, doesn't it? So if I was to go into battle with myself, and I was against a lot of sort of small, not trained people. I'm 6'3", I weigh over 200 pounds. I can be pretty aggressive if need be, but yeah. So yeah, I would go into that battle with myself. Now, would I go into battle against 200 UFC fighters with myself? No, probably not, because I mean, even one UFC fighter, and it's not going to go very well because they're trained. And it would be the same with any sort of military across the decades, whether it's modern warfare or going back to where you had a sword and a mace. So again, bizarre. But let's say you're probably screaming at the podcast now and screaming at the camera. Let's say it's metaphorically speaking, so we're not talking like the literal sense of going to battle. So what are we talking? Are we talking trust? Okay, so there's people that I trust a lot. Now, would I go into battle with them? Probably not, because they're not trained and we wouldn't get very far. Now, would I trust them with my feelings or discussing issues that I might be having? Yeah, if I suddenly had to go to hospital, they would be the first person I talk with. But in terms of going into battle, like, they wouldn't be first on my list. So, again, like, I honestly think this is the most bizarre question in the world, because, and also, like, on the flip side, like, who's going to say no as a reference that somebody's put down? Who's going to go, no, I won't go into battle with Sean? But on the flip side, if I'm looking at it and I have to go into battle against, like, whoever it is, like, there's a million and one trained individuals that I'm going to go into battle with. And then, like I said, regarding the trust element, like I kind of don't want to go into battle with a friend that I trust or a loved one that I trust. So I don't understand like what they're after in the question. Now, is there a better way to ask that? I would argue yes, by quite simply asking, do you trust Sean? Or if you worked in an organisation, would you want Sean involved in that organisation? Or if you were in my position as owner of this soccer club, would you want Sean in that position? I think they're all better ways to frame the question, other than just saying, would you go into battle? Now, I know people might be listening going, well, it's just the whatever it is. It's just an interview question. But when you start to go through these interview questions, it is very, very bizarre, because somebody is asking a person to spend, like, that person, the owner, is trying to find the right fit for the position. Now, I would argue that that question doesn't get you any closer to whether or not that person's the right fit. And then on the flip side, as the candidate, with somebody asking that, it also raises questions on, like, is this going to be the best person to work for? So yeah, that was bizarre, and again, I think there's better ways of putting it, but there you go. Okay, so the second part of this podcast. So we've talked about like a certain question, and again, I could give like a million different examples of questions that I've been asked over the years, and we're talking 20 years now of interview questions. Have they all been like that? No. Have some of them been better? Yes. But recently this has been my experience. Now, the next thing, as as a candidate, is how do you deal with not being able to get a position that you're more than qualified for, but somebody else gets who's less qualified. Now, this is something that's recently happened to me, and just to sort of frame this a little bit easier, and again, I honestly think this probably goes into all different realms, different industries, and it isn't just in the sort of soccer and coaching world. So when you, let's say, typically you come out of high school, and you want to be a soccer coach, you want to be like a Mourinho or Guardiola. So straight away, like, you need to be around the sport. So you do that. You're either playing or volunteering, you're helping somebody. But let's say you want to like take it up a notch. So you go to college, say you go to university, and you get a really solid foundation of academia behind you. From there, then there's certain courses that you need to do. So coaching badges, for me, it was level 1 to UEFA B, UEFA A. You get them. But on that journey, you're obviously going for different jobs. Now, some of the jobs might be slightly a little bit more ambitious, where they want a UEFA B coach, but you're only level 2. But you're close to the job, so you apply for it. Now, if you don't get the job because the B license coach gets the job and you're only level 2, you don't mind. I went for a job back in 2014. It was at Liverpool Football Club, and it was for opposition analysis. Good position, working with the first team, and out of 600 applicants got down to the interview, and there was a couple of us, and eventually I lost out because the person had more Premier League experience than me. And at the time, even though it was disappointed that I got that close, I was also okay with the fact that the person that got the position was more experienced than me. Now, with that, there's this sort of like, ladder system that you can deal with. So, you don't get the job because you don't have as much experience. No problem. You're going to work over the next coming years to get more experience. You don't get the job because you don't have the qualifications, so you work on getting the qualifications. Now, what do you do when you're at the point where you have the experience and you have the qualifications, but you don't get the job because somebody else has got the position for reasons that you're not sort of privy to? And that's where it makes it very difficult, because you want to be logical in that you're going to look at your CV and you go, right, is my CV strong enough? Do I have the experience? Do I have this? Do I have that? And you go through it, and you're like, okay, yes, I'm pretty happy with my CV. And then you look at your qualifications. Is there any other qualifications that I could do that could enhance me getting like said positions in the future? And you go, yeah, okay. And then you look at the candidate that's getting the positions, and the less qualified, and they have less experience. Now that makes it tremendously tricky to deal with and navigate. And that's, I suppose that's the point, at the point where I am at the moment, where you're applying for stuff that you're more than qualified for, more than experienced for, but you're not getting. So what do you do with that? Now there's two ways. You can either sort of lose your head and go into a sort of a negative spiral, which is very tempting to do and easy to do, or you can keep pushing. You can keep chipping away and I don't know, grind it out, for want of a better word. And I think for me personally, that's the one thing that's helped with workouts, where you don't really see the end, but you keep going, because ultimately, like, to get the results that you want, you've just got to keep pushing. And that's kind of where I am at the moment, where it might not make sense at the moment, but you've just got to believe in the end result. And if you quit, then that is the end. And do you really, hand on heart, want to quit? If you do, that's fine, no problem. But I think for me personally, I'd rather keep sort of driving forward. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that, just to let people know that it isn't all sort of roses and nice, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, but we keep going. Yeah, I'll be back soon on a different topic. Hopefully this one works the same as Wednesday's episode. Last week's episode was filmed with Morecambe FC's backdrop. It was the stadium there, and this week should hopefully be a new one. Alright, thanks for listening.